I'm sure you must have heard of names like Mahatma Gandhi, George Orwell, and Gautam Buddha. Apart from sharing the same spirit of freedom, these three personalities were bound by something else as well: the same piece of land, Eastern Champaran. And this same piece of land also played an important role in the independence of our country, because over a century ago, a quiet town in Bihar became the birthplace of a movement that changed India forever. So, on the occasion of the 80th Independence Day celebration of our beloved country, we have come to pay tribute to that very place in a vehicle that is quietly changing the mobility landscape in India, the Hyundai Creta Electric. And while we are here, why not go check out some other hidden gems? So come on, let's go. Getting to Motihari from Delhi meant a trip of nearly 1,000 kilometers. And this long drive on the highways and expressways in the Creta Electric made me realize just how effortless long-distance EV travel has become. There's no engine noise, no gear shifts, just loads of power for easy cruising on the highway, instant torque for making quick overtakes, and a remarkably silent and quiet cabin experience. Yes, the charging infrastructure is still not as widespread as conventional fuel pumps, but it is growing rapidly. Driving this Creta EV on the highway shows a predictable drop in the range because there's not a lot of regen, but despite that, I am easily getting a range of close to 350 kilometers. And thanks to DC fast charging support in the Creta Electric, our charging stops were brief enough to barely interrupt the journey. When you read or hear about India's independence movement, names like Dandi and Sabarmati often get most of the attention, and Motihari rarely tops the list. But this is the very place where in 1917 Mahatma Gandhi came and took a stand with the local indigo farmers. This was the Champaran Satyagraha, his very first test of non-violent resistance in India. Gandhiji came to Champaran in 1917 at the insistence of a local indigo farmer, Rajkumar Shukla, whose statue still stands here at the Mahatma Gandhi Satyagraha Smarak. At the time, the farmers in the region were being forced to cultivate indigo on a portion of their land under exploitative terms. The practice had pushed many farmers into debt, and they wanted someone to stand up for their rights. Gandhiji arrived here to investigate their grievances, but the authorities ordered him to leave Champaran. But he simply refused. What followed was an act of civil disobedience, Gandhiji choosing to obey his conscience rather than an order he believed was unjust. He was summoned to appear before the authorities, but eventually they backed down, allowing Gandhiji to continue his investigation. And so, this pivotal movement in our history didn't begin with loud rallies or chaos or violence. It began with one man choosing to stand with people who felt they had no voice. And that quiet act of defiance would go on to become an important chapter in India's freedom struggle. It is a good reminder that monumental changes don't always start with a loud noise. Sometimes they start with the quiet whispers of determination to do better. Motihari has another detail that catches people off guard. Eric Arthur Blair, also known as George Orwell, the man behind works such as The Animal Farm and 1984, was born right here in this cottage in 1903. George Orwell's literary works questioned the abuse of power, propaganda, and suppression of individual freedom, and became some of the most influential political writings of the 20th century. His approach towards fighting for the people was also not with swords and guns, but through the humble pen.
It is wild to imagine that Motihari connects these two completely different but global stories in one small place.
Unfortunately, Orwell's Birthplace hasn't quite received the attention and care one might expect. It sits in a rather neglected state and is home to the local pigs. But we think Orwell would not mind these unexpected guests finding shelter in his former abode. And of course, you can't drive all the way to Bihar and skip the food. Champaran specifically is famous for its ahuna meat, slowly cooked inside sealed earthen pots so all the spices and the meat melt together. If you are in the region, we highly recommend trying this dish out.
Now, the next place that we are going to is also quite majestic and special, but for that we have to get outside of Motihari and go a little bit further away, but we are still going to be in Eastern Champaran. This is the site I was talking about. We have traveled just about 60 kilometers away from Motihari and come to the Kesariya Stupa, the largest and tallest Buddhist stupa in the entire world.
The Kesariya Stupa is traditionally associated with Buddha's final journey from Vaishali towards Kushinagar. According to tradition, Buddha left his alms bowl with the Licchavis here before continuing on his final journey. What is striking is its sheer scale. The structure rises around 104 feet into the sky, while its base stretches roughly 400 feet across.
It is said to have been built around the 3rd century BC, and it has endured and carried that same message of peace and non-violence that Gandhiji preached and used during his Satyagraha. It shows how this very important and pivotal value that we have as humans can endure the test of time and can overcome many difficulties to stand in all its glory.
One might think that a futuristic EV does not belong on rural roads such as these, but if you really think about it, this is a setting that the Creta Electric perfectly fits in. It's a vehicle that is about peace and quiet. You aren't disturbing the villages as you pass through them. There's no exhaust smoke or any loud engine noise, and the driving feels completely effortless. Another highlight is the suspension that copes really well with the imperfections on the road. You are not thrown around the cabin and experience a ride quality that is refined and comfortable. While the chance to use regen braking on the highways was scarce, once I was caught up in the chaos of the city streets and narrow village roads, I employed the iPedal technology by setting the regen to the maximum level through the paddle shifters. This allowed for single pedal driving and took away the hassle of using the brake pedal, making the drive experience even more hassle-free while also feeding the battery and increasing my range substantially. Having spent so much time with the Creta Electric on this trip got me thinking about something.
The Hyundai Creta Electric isn't trying to shout its way into the future. It goes about its business quietly, efficiently, and effortlessly. I mean, just look at the design. It does not feel like it's hungry for attention and is demanding it from you, but it naturally draws in the admiration of people that look at this very smart and very familiar looking body shape. Even on the inside, the cabin feels very familiar and everything has been placed where you would expect it to be. The driving experience is likable, it's predictable, and the ride quality is a big plus. Combine all of that and you have a package which is dependable, which is reliable, and which is very easy to just get into and drive off.
On top of this, Hyundai has taken their customer-first philosophy a step further by introducing battery as a service for the Creta Electric, lowering its starting price to just 10.99 lakh rupees. Through battery as a service, Hyundai separates the cost of the battery from the vehicle, lowering the initial cost of entry. The battery cost is then linked to how much you drive.
So, by giving everyday Indian buyers a familiar SUV, an electric vehicle that is practical to use, and an easier transition into the EV ecosystem, the Creta Electric is quietly helping bring electric mobility into the mainstream. This drive down to Motihari brought us close to a very important chapter in our country's history. The Champaran Satyagraha started off as a quiet movement but quickly snowballed into something much bigger that ultimately played a big role in the independence of our beloved country. Along the route, we also found some hidden gems that were tucked away in unassuming corners, but that did not mean that their importance in our culture, in our society, in our history was any less than all the big monuments and big places that we get to see and read about on a regular basis. That is what this journey reminded us, that the spirit of freedom does not only manifest itself in movements that are loud and aggressive, it can also be found in movements that are quiet, deliberate, and thoughtful. With that, I wish you all a very happy Independence Day. Jai Hind.